Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date. My name is Erich Kurschat. I'm the owner of Harmony Insights LLC, a company that lets me work with organizations and consultants using the DISC personality assessment. People are being assessed online. They're coming together virtually for conversations around how they can connect with one another more effectively in the workplace or in a blended sort of work environment, some from home. Maybe some people have been brought back to an office. And those workshops, those DISC workshops can all be done virtually. And I've done a number of those just in recent weeks alone. So companies are really investing in their team members in that way. harmonyinsights.com for that information. I'm also the founder of the HR Hot Seat Inclusive Mastermind community of, as we say, real HR pros solving real HR problems. All free, all online. You can find out more about that at hrhotseat.com, including about the Chicago chapter's upcoming event this week. Thursday evening, we have our 51st consecutive monthly mastermind event, and you can find out about that at hrhotseat.com. Today, you have joined us for a Harmony Insights lunch date. And I am really thrilled to have my guest, Jay Polaki, with us today. Jay, welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date.
Thank you, Eric. I'm so excited to be here today. And sorry about the reschedule, but I'm glad we're able to do this pretty fast, at least in the month of October.
Oh, that is no problem at all. Yes, our people
Yes.
joining us may know that this was previously scheduled for another date, but we appreciate you joining us today on the 13th. Jay, you and I got connected only recently, and I know that I've seen you on social media, very active. You've been interviewed on various podcasts. You've done quite a bit of writing. Even before we get into your topic, can you give people just a quick background about you and the work that you're doing these days with HR Geckos?
Great. Well, thank you again for having me. And hello, everyone. Nice to see a few familiar faces. Hi, Jane. Hi, Mary. Um, I started HR Geckos a couple years ago because I really felt the need to develop technology around HR services and processes. And being in HR for this long, I've been working in HR in the field of HR. I'm an IO psychologist by profession. And I've built a number of tools and assessments around an employee's life cycle and worked in talent management for so long with, all the other compensation and employee relations pieces. I really wanted to build a product that could help address some of the services we provide as an HR department. And hence, HR Geckos was born a couple of years ago. And it's just been a very fruitful journey so far. So I'm the founder of an HR technology company with a lot of HR background. And I just love doing what I'm doing right now. It's a great time in my career to be engaged in this work, and it's become even more meaningful with our current world situation and all the different innovative ideas that we HR folks are thinking about and trying to implement in our workplaces. So this is just an awesome period in my career, and I'm so happy to share this journey with folks as and when I meet them online or offline, mostly online these days. So
Yes,
thank you.
mostly online. That is true for all of us. And I will just add that you have one of the coolest logos I've ever seen. Your HR Geckos logo is pretty neat. And I heard a story actually, I believe that you told on the HR Social Hour half hour podcast. What's behind your logo?
Yeah, so it's actually I started out as HR Godzilla. So it's actually a Godzilla, and that logo was chosen by my 5-year-old nephew at that time. And the neat story about that is we wanted to burn down all these HR paper piles and automate the HR services, and that's the reason why we started as HR Godzilla. But then we realized it had a very ominous ring in certain parts of the world, especially in the Asian market. And so we kind of piped down and said, okay, we'll be HR geckos, because geckos do transform themselves, and they transform, and we as HR geckos will transform your work processes from paper-based to fully automated, or at least semi-automated processes. And so that's how that logo came about, and the color scheme and all of that just came about, and we were able to stick with it even though we rebranded ourselves as HR geckos.
I love it. I'm on your LinkedIn page now, as a matter of fact, so you can see there the really cool logo that she has. I see founder and CEO. I see a founder and CEO again of another organization, a third organization. You really have done quite a bit, and I would encourage people to check out your LinkedIn profile and connect with you there. Jay, as we're talking about the topic that you've chosen, people know for the my lunch dates that I choose my guests and they choose our topics. And I came to you and say, Jay Polaki, we need to talk again. I want you to choose what we're going to discuss. And you said, okay, we're going to call this Innovating the HR Storybox. I was immediately curious about that title, especially the term Storybox, which I followed up and asked you about. Could you give people a sense of what it is about this topic, the opportunity and ability and even privilege, I would say, for HR professionals to lead change, to bring people back into the workplace, to facilitate re-entry? What is it about this topic that really resonates with you, so much so that you'd be passionate enough about it to suggest it for today's discussion?
Wonderful. The concept of a story box actually arose from something I saw while I was at the India office last year, and I was ordering supplies off of Amazon. And some of my supplies came in an Amazon story box, and apparently it only exists in India. It doesn't happen here in the US, and so that was a unique experience. They had, stories of the Amazon sellers and artisans who build products for Amazon and sell it on the Amazon warehouse, through the Amazon warehouse, and they had a picture of the person, and it was, one of those computer graphics that it looks like a QR code, but it's actually a picture of a person, and you can scan it to learn more about that seller or that artisan or that product builder. And they call it the Amazon story box. So I got to thinking about, how Amazon pulls together all these stories of the amazing people that have made a career, made a life on their platform. It's one of the biggest online platforms to buy and sell anything, and there are pros and cons to that, which is a topic for a different time. But I'm amazed at how they put together this Amazon story box, and so that got me thinking about our HR story box. How are we portraying ourselves? How are we branding ourselves in this new world of work? Not after the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, because we were, seeing a lot of technological transformation, and me being in the throes of building a product to kind of bring about that technological transformation in HR departments got me thinking about how are we branding ourselves? What is the story box that we are presenting to the organizations that we work with or work at? And how are we recoding the whole, world of work, using the stories that we as HR folks have seen in our careers?
I love that you say that. So many of the previous lunch dates have been on the topic of story and branding and voice. Our mutual friend Wendy Daly of the HR Social Hour half hour podcast, she came on to talk about voice. Lotus Buckner came on that week or the week before or after to talk about finding your voice. And I love that you're bringing that up as a common theme. I think it bears noting that we're using the term HR professional fairly broadly. Wouldn't you say that we're not simply talking about HR generalists, but we're talking about learning and development professionals. We're talking about talent acquisition, benefits, payroll. The list really does go on and on when we're talking about this HR umbrella, aren't we? doesn't it?
Of course, yes, definitely. I mean, we are leaders without titles. That's how I see us in an organization. We are not seen as, the powerful people in an organization who make the decisions. We are seen as the translators of these decisions that trickle down in the organization. How are we going to change that narrative? We definitely are the people department. No other department in an organization deals with people the way we do, day in and day out. And so why are we not seen as the people who bring about these decisions, that are in favor of the folks that we work for and work with, by the people, of the people, for the people? We are it. We are the HR, the Senate, the HR Congress. We are everything for the organization. And how are we bringing, this? How are we changing this narrative? I've been in HR so long, and I've, frankly, gotten very upset about the fact that we're always thrown under the bus for everything. That happens in an organization. I've seen employees come to HR only when they have problems. I've rarely seen them come to HR and say, hey, you people are doing awesome work. Thank you for all the work you did. I've never seen that a lot. It happens frequently, in larger organizations, where there is a culture of, fostering that kind of positive feedback. But in most organizations, it's very rare to see that. And so it really, got me thinking about, why are we not changing this narrative more aggressively, more vociferously? Why are we not doing it as HR professionals? I think it's in our DNA to do this. We should, and we must.
That makes you the very first lunch date guest who used the word vociferously. I really appreciate that. Well done. I might
Well,
even have to
big
look that
words.
up afterwards. Honestly, I might have to look it up. So I want to make
um,
sure we get right into, or continue with, the challenges that our attendees potentially face around this topic. I think that you've already dug into one, which is the is reputation. Um,
mhm.
Working against how we are perceived, how we are engaged as professionals in the workplace. What are some of the other challenges, or even if they're related to that, that you see? And I have a couple in mind myself, but I'm interested in your thoughts. Challenges that you see HR professionals face who really want to define the story box, and I love that term, and some people in the chat have really liked it as well. But innovating this story that we have to tell, this brand that we have to bring to the workplace, and leading change as true change management professionals, especially now as we're considering what the future of work is going to look like.
Mhm. Well, I read a lot, as well as write, but my writing is informed by my reading, and my reading is informed by my writing, and it works really well for me. And in my reading, I found that there are certain things that most organizational leaders have done in the past, even before this whole, change in our environment and our work situation. And they've spoken about empathy in the workplace. And I'm like I mentioned, a psychologist, by my educational background, in IO psychology. I have two masters in it, one from India and one from America, so different perspectives. And I've always wondered why we do not have, that H in HR, that human, why we don't highlight that more, because we are, as HR professionals, are humans first before we are all these policy people, and we are seen as the paper pushers in an organization always, which we really need to change. But why are we not, using our human side to lead this narrative? Empathy is not something that's a, mythical, uh, complicated concept. At least from my reading and understanding of it, it's something we can definitely learn to practice. Of course, it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. But why are we not using the human side of us as human resources professionals to lead this narrative? Are we viewing all the different processes in HR from a very policy perspective or from a people perspective? How are we going about, leading this change? What is the innovation that we want to bring to our organizations while keeping that H in HR intact? And I've started conversations about this with most people I've met. In fact, I've spoken about this on the HR Social Hour. I've spoken to Josh Dreen on his employee engagement podcast. I've spoken to a few others about empathy on one of the other podcasts that I was on just the other day. And it's treated as a very complicated concept, something that people can't wrap their heads around, but it really isn't. It can really be taught and practiced, and it only happens as we talk more about it. So that's one of the biggest takeaways from all my reading about how we can innovate our HR Storybox.
I am going to follow up with attendees for this particular conversation via email after we talk, and hopefully we can include some links to one or two books, Jay, that you have found to be particularly insightful on the topic of empathy or anything that we're going to discuss today. And I love your psychology background. I have a psychology major myself. You know, I do a lot of work with diverse personality and communication styles. And I particularly appreciate that you said that empathy is something that can be taught, because we will have some folks who show up and say, you know what, I don't know that I'm an empathetic person. I think I'm much more task focused. I'm really good with numbers. I can handle spreadsheets, but the empathy side of things, I'm not so certain I'm capable of. And it sounds like you're saying that we're all capable of empathy.
Yes, I think so. I think, we, like I said, we think it's very complicated, but it really isn't. I come from a family of a lot of healthcare professionals, physicians, as well as engineers. And I'm kind of the black sheep because I'm the psychologist in the family. So,
how dare you? How dare you?
uh, I see both sides, professionally, how they approach things as a physician approaches projects and undertakes solutions, and how an engineer approaches projects and undertakes solutions. And it can definitely be taught. You'd think that a physician is more empathetic than an engineer. But in my case, I found that some of the engineers in my family are more empathetic than the physicians. So, firsthand experience has taught me that empathy can definitely be taught, and we should prejudge people based on their vocation or their, training or their occupational, skill set. It's definitely very unique to each person, and engaging and trying to be not just in someone else's shoes, but actually truly talking with the person, truly conversing and actually engaging in their real life day-to-day activities along with them as much as you can, does help you build your empathy. And for example, I've never worked with religious groups, just because that's not how I was raised. But then there's a lot of religious rhetoric that happens not just here in America, but also in India, especially now with the heightened political stuff that's going on all over the world, for that matter. And it got me thinking about the Islamic religion, Catholic religion. I went to Catholic school when I was a kid, and Hinduism. I'm basically a Hindu by religion. I was born into a family that follows and practices Hinduism, and I never attended a synagogue because there weren't many Jewish people where I grew up in India. And after I moved to the United States, I've never, I've had a few friends, but really never went to a synagogue myself. So I kind of tried to go and learn more about that religion. I tried to engage in activities with kids in my neighborhood who are Jewish. And I'm so fascinated by it. I live in Maryland, and Baltimore has a huge Hasidic Jewish population, and some of my colleagues are Jewish. And so over the years, I've learned so much, and it's such a beautiful experience to learn about another religion. And there's so many commonalities I found between all the religions that I've learned about.
Yeah.
So that's an example of how I've learned to practice more empathy when it comes to certain things that I've never experienced in the past.
Yeah, that's very helpful. In a lot of the disc work that I do, I talk about being naturally curious, certainly, but wanting to treat others the way that they would want to be treated. But that starts with
Mhm.
acknowledging that different people do want to be treated differently, and I may have my own values and preferences and priorities, but I can't assume that they are yours as well. And once I put myself in a place to be open to the fact that yours may be different to begin with, but then wanting to learn about them, to respect them, to embrace them, and maybe adopt any that that seem like they may be worth checking out.
No, no,
Right?
I do adopt different things from different religions,
Yeah,
especially
right.
during Thanksgiving. I have all
Right.
kinds of,
Yeah.
different foods on the table I serve, and I love it. I love to
Yeah.
cook all the different
I
foods. And
I will adopt any different foods that anybody want to send my way. So I want to continue on this. If you can believe it, we're already about 7 minutes from having to close up shop here, but um, we have people on the phone who are on our conversation today that are departments of one, um, saying, how do I even begin to innovate? How do I begin to lead this change that you're talking about? I have people who probably work for organizations where leadership doesn't empower them naturally to do some of this change management and leadership. I have people with us, we have people with us who are in front of students who say, how can I, as a human resources student, a student of human resources, begin to affect change for an organization? What would you say to people who show up with these perceived limitations?
well, for one, there is no magic potion. There isn't. Um, each one of us has to build our own magic potion. The formula is going to differ based on your unique situation and your unique experiences and workplace culture and leadership at your workplace. But there's one thing that definitely is going to help anyone, and that's having a sense of curiosity. I think, you know, each one of us comes with a unique sense of curiosity about the world we live in and the world we work in and our interactions. And letting that curiosity out of the box and letting that curiosity lead your empathetic journey to foster innovation in your HR departments and in your workplace will definitely stand you in good stead. It's helped me a lot. I mean, curiosity did not kill this cat. It definitely led me to have unique experiences and lead lots of different change initiatives in my career, as well as in the work that I'm doing now as we build a product to foster this kind of empathetic communication in organizations using technology as one of our tools. And definitely curiosity, I would say. And there's some research out of Harvard that does speak to this. I will send you a link to that, because they do say that the basis of empathy and how it can be taught is how curious an individual is about the world that we, live in and work in.
Love it. So we've touched on empathy, curiosity, vulnerability shows up on occasion in discussions like this as well, a willingness to be vulnerable. And we know Brene Brown is somebody who speaks pretty regularly
Yes,
on that
yes.
topic. I would love to add, and I'd be interested to hear if
In
you agree
fact, I
with
have
this,
her
that
book right here.
look at that.
Yeah.
Over the course of the
And
past,
yeah. I also wanted to bring up this book by Stephen Brown, HR Rising. If you haven't read it, it's really, really amazing. You should read it.
all right, we'll
I
include
haven't
links
finished
to
reading it,
those.
but I've read it up to chapter 4 before I had to go on to other things. But I'm going to get back to it. And it's a good segue that you brought up vulnerability, because um, I know I didn't want to speak too much in depth about this, but I recently experienced a huge loss in my personal life. My father passed away, and that really got me thinking about bereavement leave in organizations. And, when I was in HR, our policies dictated that bereavement leave, when it's a direct relative, like a mother, father, spouse, or daughter or son, um, it was for a day or maybe 5 days at the most. And then you were expected to come back to work and move on and move forward. It's not that easy. I've never experienced this personally, so I've never thought about it this way, but it's a process. Grief is so different for different people. I've just noticed my sister grieves in a different way, my brother grieves in a different way, I grieve in a different way, my husband grieves in a different way, the loss of his father-in-law. I'm it's so different, and we can't just say 5 days of bereavement leave and we're done with it. And that's a conversation we need to be having, especially now where there's so much loss around us, so much grief, not just because of loss, but because of the anxiety around our world situation right now. So that's definitely something that's on my mind, and that's another topic for another day. But I think it's very crucial that we start thinking about that too. How are we using our empathy, and how are we extending that to folks who can't express it the way perhaps I am doing right now, and helping them out in the workplace, because there's so much of that around us now.
Yeah.
So that's definitely another topic
Well,
that I
thank
can
you for
share.
that, Jay. I mean, we're certainly sorry for your loss and appreciative that you brought that lesson to this conversation. I think I can speak from experience. At one point I had to sit down and write policies for a handbook, and I sat down, and bereavement was just sort of numbers at that point, right? Okay, what seems
Yeah.
appropriate? Well, how long do we want people away from their desks? And it can be very black and white. But if that's the very reputation that we are pushing against and trying to grow away from as HR professionals, we need to think differently about the policies that we're writing and the practices that we're encouraging. So I think that's a fantastic reminder. Jay, this has been a far too short conversation, as I'm sure you would agree. When people want to reach out to you hereafter, where should they find you online?
Well, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and Twitter, as well as Facebook and Instagram. I'm not as active on Instagram, but definitely Twitter and LinkedIn, professionally, as well as a Facebook blog for all things J Polaki, not just professional, but my personal side. I love to write, so I do that too. So definitely reach out. I'd love to connect on either platform. I'm pretty social.
And
So
I would say these days you can turn on just about any podcast and hear Jay Polaki talking about something.
yeah,
She's really making
I,
the rounds.
I, I do not want to be on the radar of everyone like that, but I guess people like to talk, and I like to talk, so I'm
There you go.
being
It's a match
invited to
made
a
in
lot more
heaven.
conversations.
Well, we're going to invite you to stay around. Jay, do you have a few minutes to answer some questions if people want to stick around and talk a little bit more with you?
Sure, definitely.
Wonderful. Before you leave, and it's 12:30 now, but before you go, I'd hopefully you're as inspired by this conversation as I was, and that you'll go back to harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. We have one more coming up this week on Thursday, the power of HR community. I would love some help spreading the word about this. This is going to feature
Sure.
Courtney Templin, who is the president of JB Training Solutions and also the president of Chicago SHRM. Currently, we're going to talk about the power of HR community, really how we can ensure that HR is a profession that is not a lonely one. I
Hmm.
think it's going to be a great conversation. I would love to have more people registered to join us. So if you would be willing to help share the link that you see on the screen, that would be helpful. Next Thursday, Katie Lopez, who I believe is with us this afternoon, is going to give or we're going to have a conversation around the HR anthropologist, how anthropology can help inform our inclusion efforts. I can't wait. That's going to be such a unique perspective that Katie's going to bring. How about this? October 29th, The Principles of Winning with Desmond Clark, a former tight end for the Chicago Bears. He's a current entrepreneur, does some speaking and some writing. He and I have had some great conversations. So I can't wait to talk with Desmond on the 29th. Just two more on the calendar for now. I'm going into mid-December, Parenting in a Pandemic on November 5th with Jay Brown from Hub International. That's a new topic that has not graced the lunch date calendar. And then finally, we're going to end mid-November with Kim LeClaire turning toward each other, the silver lining of a pandemic, how the pandemic has encouraged us to connect in ways that maybe we hadn't previously. And I love this title, Turning Toward Each Other. And Kim and I are just going to have, she's a really close friend. We're going to have a very good conversation about that. Jay, I really appreciate, I've said this to other guests, I appreciate you spending time with us, but I particularly appreciate you trusting us enough with some of the information that you've brought to share with us. And I know that if people take what you've said to heart, we will begin or continue building more empathetic, curious company cultures. Do you agree?
Yes, of course. And thank you for, all the questions and the, engaging conversation with you, Eric. I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy all your HR conversations. And so thank you for bringing me to your table to talk about this important topic. I really enjoy it.